many of the unsung heroes here, the winners of the Eureka Prize for scientific research are often underappreciated, even though their work can change the lives of millions. This year, the prize goes to a team of cryptographers.
And the winner is the cryptographic team from the ANU and the University of Queensland.
Cryptography, the science of code making and code breaking, is most often associated with spies and military secrets. Covert communications are kept secure by using a secret code to encrypt sensitive information. In the new digital age, secrecy is paramount. Our financial, business and defence communications and control of our public infrastructure needs to be kept safe from thieves, spies and terrorists. For the last couple of decades, most of our secure digital transmissions have been protected by codes or keys based on incredibly difficult mathematics. But now, a talented team of physicists and engineers have come up with a new, absolutely secure encryption method that's based not on the laws of mathematics, but on the laws of quantum mechanics. And it's light years ahead of today's encryption techniques. So you guys are the theoretical part of the team?
That's right. We do the quantum theory up at the University of Queensland.
So what about current encryption techniques? Why are they so difficult to break?
Well, security at the moment is based on mathematical functions and the fact that some mathematical functions are harder to do in one direction than another. An example of this is multiplication and division. So, for example, it's easy to times numbers together, but it's a bit harder to divide them. With small numbers, that's not much of a problem, but when you get to really large numbers, it's very difficult.
As the numbers get bigger, the chance of cracking the code becomes exponentially more difficult. Difficult enough to prevent our data from being deciphered, but not necessarily from being intercepted.
If you go on the internet and communicate with your bank or something like that, then somebody can eavesdrop on your communication.
And while almost every one of us relies on current encryption techniques to prevent digital eavesdroppers, it seems that there's rarely, if ever, an absolute guarantee.
A recent global security survey showed that around 80% of financial institutions had suffered a security incident in the last 12 months.
Very few of those breaches involve data in transmission from A to B. Attacking transmissions is just not worth the effort. The encryption techniques are way too powerful. But that might change in the future.
One of the risks to the strength of that encryption is going to be the ability of attackers to harness large amounts of computing power by infecting large numbers of computers on the internet with malicious software that would enable them to collectively bring the power of a supercomputer to the attacker in trying to decrypt that data.
If data in transmission is captured and stored, it might be possible to decrypt it some years down the track.
With the advent of one of three possibilities, either a supercomputer or a very clever mathematician who invents a method to decrypt the encryption algorithm, or a quantum computer, say 5 years hence, they could use one of these techniques against stored away data. So we are very convinced that we're potentially sitting on a problem of some magnitude for certain classes of information here and now.
This supercomputer at the Australian National University takes up almost 300 square metres of floor space and has almost 2,000 processors. It can do 9 trillion calculations per second and will soon be even faster.
Computers are getting bigger, and this machine will double its capacity every year if we keep with the trend line of what's happening internationally.
Even at double the capacity, a supercomputer could take millions of years to crack some of the stronger encryption codes used today. But for the next generation computers, current encryptions may be child's play. And that's why the work of these young scientists at the Australian National University is so important. This mind-boggling device behind me generates a laser that's carrying an unbreakable code. The science behind it is called quantum cryptography. And if you think it looks complicated, you're right, it is. Quantum cryptography is based on the properties of microscopic light particles called photons. Thomas and Andrew, you built this really complicated looking contraption. What does it do?
Well, this is a system to send encrypted information between a sender and a receiver. And actually the way we do that is using a bright laser beam.
Now what exactly are you sending in that laser beam?
Well, because we're sending a key for encryption, the key is actually just noise, so it is just random numbers. So we're actually just encoding random numbers onto this laser beam, which are then measured over here.
The random numbers encoded onto the sides of the laser beam create the secret code that is passed between sender and receiver.
The laser beam is actually really quite fragile. If anyone tries to tamper with it or measure it, they'll reveal their presence and be discovered.
And that is the crux of quantum mechanics and quantum cryptography. By observing a subatomic particle, you'll disturb it. It's what makes the system totally fail-safe. This prototype can already emulate distances of up to 100 kilometres. It might not sound very far, but it is far enough to have created some major interest outside the lab. The Australian Defence Force is one of the cryptography team's major funders. Ever since the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, defence forces around the globe have stepped up their security measures. And Australia's Defence Force is no exception. Like the crypto team, the Defence Force is looking toward the future.
Quantum cryptography basically provides a future-proofing of current systems. So when you're considering developing technologies which might be useful in the battlefield in 10 or 20 years' time, you really need to look at what the world might be like in 10 or 20 years' time.
And it's not just our Defence Force systems that need protecting into the future. A lot of public infrastructure, such as utilities and gas, power and water, can be remote controlled. Security breaches with transmissions that control these types of structures could be disastrous. Although the work of this quantum cryptography team is still in its infancy, it's tried, tested, and almost ready for commercial use.
Quantum cryptography in its current incarnation has a limitation of the order of 100 kilometers over which it can securely protect the transmission of data. Within this sort of radius, we see that, for example, the parliamentary triangle, you could have buildings where they could securely exchange information.
And that's just the beginning. Quantum cryptography could spell the end of the age-old battle between the code makers and the code breakers. An unbreakable code made possible by the Eureka prize-winning team from ANU and the University of Queensland.